You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been discarded, and deep down you knew they'd regret it? In a world where noise is loud and attention is fleeting, being unforgettable isn't about being the loudest. It's about carrying yourself with quiet confidence, emotional strength, and magnetic self-respect. But here's the truth most men ignore. You were never too emotional. You were just hard to control. You weren't weak, you were underestimated. We've been trained to perform, to please, to chase, to explain. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Master yourself. Build quiet power. Detach from their judgment. Become whole before you're chosen. This video is not about becoming better for them. It's about becoming unshakable for yourself. Inside, you'll discover 7 ways to become the kind of man they remember long after you've gone. The man whose energy lingers. The one who no longer begs, chases, or apologizes. Because he chooses. He builds. He evolves. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or too much for the world, you're not alone. You're just becoming rare. And rare men are remembered. So stay with me. Tap that like button if this message already speaks to you, and subscribe for more Stoic motivation built for men who refuse to settle. Let's rebuild you from the inside out, in silence, in strength, in truth. 1. Be authentically yourself. Stop performing. They never regretted losing the version of you that was edited, agreeable, and easy to digest. They only start to regret when they realize they never actually knew you, because you were too busy playing a role you thought they'd love. That's the curse of performing. You become so good at wearing the mask, you forget who's underneath it. And when they walk away, you don't just lose them, you lose your grip on who you were trying to become. We live in a world obsessed with appearance, not just physical, but emotional. Men are trained early. Don't speak too honestly, don't show too much intensity, don't be too much of anything. Keep it smooth, keep it digestible, keep it quiet. So we perform, at work, at home, in relationships. We say the right things, not the real ones. We hold back the reaction, the truth, the instinct, just to keep the peace. But peace built on suppression is not peace. It's performance. And performance always ends in burnout, resentment, or invisibility. You become the man who gave everything but was never really seen. Because what you gave them wasn't you. It was a version of you shaped by their comfort. That's why they forgot so easily. That's why it never stuck. Because a shadow can't leave a mark. Only substance can. The Stoics rejected performance culture long before it had a name. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal to be liked. He wrote to stay anchored in who he was. Epictetus never chased an image. He pursued mastery of the self. They didn't decorate their lives to be admired. They stripped it back to see what would remain when everything else was removed. And what remained was presence. Discipline. Command. What makes a man unforgettable is not perfection, it's presence. The kind of presence that doesn't beg to be validated, but demands respect in silence. When you walk into a room and you're not trying to impress, yet they still feel the weight of your focus. That's not performance, that's substance. That's identity that has stopped explaining itself. And in a world of men performing, the one who doesn't becomes magnetic. But stepping into that takes a risk. It takes discomfort. Because it means you will be misunderstood by the people still addicted to your performance. They'll say you changed, you became distant, you stopped pleasing. And they'll be right. You stopped pleasing and started becoming. The mistake most men make is that they believe they need to perform to be loved. But what's loved is often the performance, not the man. And when the performance fades, the love disappears with it. That's not love, that's an audience. And you weren't born to entertain. You were built to stand. The way out is not dramatic, it's subtle, but it's deliberate. Stop saying you're fine when you're not. Stop agreeing with things that don't sit right. Stop softening your edges for people who wouldn't bleed for you. Start answering honestly. Start letting silence do the explaining. Start saying less but meaning more. Because when you stop performing, something rare happens. You're no longer one of many, you become one of one. You don't blend. You don't adapt, you hold, you anchor, and that is the man they never forget. Not because you tried to be memorable, but because you were finally real. Start here. Pick one moment today where you'd normally perform. Smile falsely, nod passively, silence your truth. Don't. Let the real man answer, not with arrogance, with presence. Let them see the version of you that doesn't need applause, just gravity, just stillness, just the truth. Because of that man doesn't get replaced. He gets remembered. 2. Own your flaws and shadows. You were never overlooked because you were broken. You were overlooked because you kept hiding what made you real. Most men are trained to bury anything that doesn't look polished, emotions that run too deep, stories that sound too raw, and flaws that don't fit the hero image. So they compartmentalize, tuck away the imperfections, build walls of control, and try to perform strength while silently crumbling inside. The irony is that what you bury becomes what controls you, and what you hide is usually the very thing that sets you apart. Flaws aren't the enemy. Pretending not to have them is, because the man who hides his darkness spends his whole life afraid of being found out, and that fear keeps him small. Safe, yes, but forgettable. You can't become unforgettable if you only show the parts of yourself that others find easy to accept. Surface can't connect. Image can't lead. Only presence can, and presence comes from wholeness. Not the version of you you edited to survive, but the one that walks with everything intact. The pain, the mistakes, the missteps, the rebuilt parts, the lessons burned into the muscle. There's a difference between a man who's never fallen and one who's rebuilt himself after collapse. One demands admiration, the other earns respect. You feel the weight in his voice, the steel in his silence. That's the kind of man people remember. Not for being flawless, but for being whole, for walking without apology, for never shrinking what made him hard to understand. In a world full of filtered men, the one who brings the unfiltered truth becomes magnetic, not because he tries to, but because no one else dares. The common mistake is assuming strength is the absence of pain, the absence of scars, the absence of fear. But true strength is the man who carries it all and still doesn't flinch. The one who can say, yes, I was shattered, yes, I bled, and no, I'm not ashamed of any of it. That kind of ownership doesn't make you weak, it makes you unstoppable, because there's nothing left they can use against you. You've seen it before. A man walks into a room and people lean in, not because he says much, but because everything about him speaks without effort. That's not charisma. That's internal weight, the kind that only comes from a man who's stopped hiding and started standing. You don't need to fix every flaw. You need to hold them like tools. Use them with discipline. Learn which ones cut through noise and which ones still need refining. But you don't throw them away. You don't amputate parts of yourself just to make others feel comfortable. The Stoics never told you to erase your pain. They told you to master your response, to observe your cracks and walk through the world without masking them. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about strength and comfort. He wrote about fire forged in loss, grief, duty, and war, and still having the clarity to return to what matters. Epictetus lived with a body that was never whole, yet built a mind that nothing could bend. That's presence, that's weight, that's what lasts. So here's your moment of action. Don't wait to be flawless. Don't hold back your presence until you've made peace with every scar. Walk forward now, with the damage, the repair, the memories. When you own all of it, they no longer own you. And when they meet you, the full, unapologetic version of you, they'll know they never stood a chance of replacing what they let go. Because men like that are built, not borrowed, and they don't return. They leave echoes. 3. Set emotional boundaries without apology. They won't tell you this, but every time you say yes when you want to say no, you train the world to disrespect you, not with words, but with access. Not through conflict, but through quiet erosion. Boundaries aren't walls, they're thresholds. They define what gets in, what stays out, and what earns the right to be close. Yet most men hesitate to set them, afraid they'll come across as cold, difficult, or selfish. But what's truly selfish is giving away parts of yourself you don't even own anymore, because you've handed them out to anyone who's smiled at you. Society teaches men to be agreeable, easygoing, accommodating, especially in relationships. You're told to listen, adapt, and avoid conflict. You're applauded for being the nice guy, even when it comes at the cost of your own voice. But being liked is not the same as being respected. And being agreeable is not the same as being safe. Most men don't lose people because they were too strong. They lose them because they were too available, too bendable, too hesitant to draw the line. And eventually, people stop valuing what's always on offer. Scarcity commands attention. Standards command presence. The Stoics weren't passive. They weren't cruel either. They were grounded. They didn't scream their limits. They lived by them. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." What's outside of your control? Other people's reactions to your boundaries. What's inside? Whether you set them anyway. Real strength isn't in volume. It's in the quiet firmness of a man who doesn't ask for permission to protect his energy. The mistake men make is assuming boundaries are confrontation. They're not. Boundaries are clarity, and clarity is respect. A man who doesn't know his limits becomes a man who gets used. Not because others are cruel, but because he never drew the map. So they keep wandering deeper, taking more, assuming silence means consent. Over time, resentment builds, but it's too late. You trained them to ignore your needs. That's not their fault. It's yours, and it's fixable. Picture a gate, not locked, but selective. That's your presence. Not everyone deserves entry. Not everyone gets the full story, the full access, the full version of you. You're not hiding, you're honoring. You're not distant, you're disciplined. Think of the most grounded men you've met. They don't overshare. They don't overextend. They don't react to everything. They hold a frame, and that frame is shaped by boundaries they don't explain. They enforce. You want to be the man they regret letting go? Then stop handing out keys to people who never earned the door. Stop softening your no to sound more digestible. Stop giving second, third, and fourth chances to patterns that drained you the first time. You're not cruel for stepping back. You're not broken for saying, "I don't allow this anymore." That's not ego. That's a command. That's presence. That's what makes you rare. Start simple. Think of one place in your life where you feel drained, emotionally, mentally, physically. Now ask, what's one boundary I haven't been honoring? Maybe it's time. Maybe it's attention. Maybe it's silence. Reclaim it. Not loudly, not emotionally, just clearly, calmly, without apology, because the man who protects his energy becomes a fortress. And fortresses don't chase, they stand. They don't over-explain, they endure. And they don't need to be loud to be felt. Their presence alone speaks. And that presence once lost is not easily replaced. It's respected. It's missed. It's remembered. 4. Choose who gets access to you. The mistake isn't that they walked away. It's that they thought they could come and go as they pleased. You gave access without a standard. Presence without filter. And in doing so, you train them to expect you without earning you. A man becomes forgettable when he becomes free to reach. There's no weight to what's always available. No gravity to a door left wide open. You weren't rejected because you weren't good enough. You were forgotten because you didn't require them to pay attention. Access is not love, it's a privilege. And privileges are earned through alignment, not attachment. But most men confuse being chosen with being worthy. They wait for permission, for validation, for someone else to decide their value. You've seen it, men rearranging their whole presence to keep a seat at someone else's table. Shrinking opinions, diluting truth, softening edges, hoping if they stay small enough, they won't be pushed away. But what you shrink to keep, you'll resent. What you filter to fit, you'll eventually abandon. Because every time you trade your depth for approval, you lose your voice. And once your voice is gone, so is your presence. The Stoics never waited to be chosen. They didn't audition for worth. They held command. They moved from internal standards, not external noise. A man who knows what he allows does not beg. He filters. He stands at the gate of his life and says, "You may enter, but not everyone gets to stay." That kind of clarity builds power that doesn't need to be announced. It shows in how you move, how you speak, and how quickly you walk away when respect disappears. But to filter access, you must know your capacity. You can't offer the best of yourself to people who only show up for pieces. A man who's always emotionally open to everyone becomes emotionally hollow to himself. He's applauded for being available, but privately he's drained, disappointed, and disrespected. Because he built a life where entry was free and exit had no cost. People respect what they earn. They value what they have to rise to meet. And when there's no standard, there's no reverence, only routine. So shift the frame. Stop asking, "Why didn't they choose me?" And start asking, "Why did I allow someone that careless into my space?" Every relationship is an energy contract. When you sign blindly, you get chaos. When you vet intentionally, you build peace. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally closed. It means becoming strategically open. It means you offer presence with discernment, not desperation. It means you understand that your peace, your time, and your attention are a limited currency. And not everyone pays in full. Imagine your life like a home. The front door shouldn't be wide open to everyone who knocks. Some people stay at the gate, some are welcome inside. Some don't get past the first conversation. Not because you're arrogant, but because you've built something worth protecting. Because you know the cost of letting the wrong energy in, and you're no longer willing to clean up messes that started with a weak boundary. Start today. Think of one connection that feels one-sided, one space where you feel your self-respect leaking. Don't confront, don't explain, just tighten access. Reduce emotional investment. Let silence do the distancing. Because the man who filters his life with clarity creates a life filled with respect. And when they realize they no longer have unearned access to you, that's when regret begins. Not because you became cruel, but because you became rare. And rare men are not replaced. They are remembered, quietly, painfully, permanently. 5. Channel your emotions with strength. They taught you to stay calm, but what they meant was stay numb. Don't raise your voice, don't feel too much, don't show them your edge. But suppressing fire doesn't make you stronger, it makes you volatile. Pressure builds, resentment brews, and one day you either explode in a moment you can't take back, or you quietly erode from the inside out. Emotional discipline isn't about denial, it's about command. Not turning off the switch, but holding the wire without letting it burn you. Emotion is energy. Every man feels it. Rage, disappointment, loneliness, desire. The difference is in how he carries it. Weak men dump it, they react, lash out, and collapse. They look for escape or attention. But the man who holds emotion without needing to broadcast it, that man becomes magnetic. There's something about his stillness that speaks louder than words. His calm isn't emptiness, it's containment, like standing near a lit furnace sealed in steel. You feel the heat, but you respect the structure. Society mistakes emotional control for emotional avoidance, and many men confuse being stoic with being dead inside. But true stoicism never asked you to mute your humanity. Marcus Aurelius wrote about fear, grief, and pain, not to hide them, but to observe them. He never said feel less. He said, don't let those feelings rule you. That's the key. You're not weak because you feel. You're weak when you let those feelings decide who you are. Men today are trained to either armor up or shut down. You're told to be a man when you're angry, and man up when you're breaking down. But emotion doesn't make you less of a man. What you do with it does. Think of a soldier standing in formation while chaos erupts around him. He doesn't flinch, not because he doesn't feel the chaos, but because he's been trained to respond, not react. That's emotional strength. Calm in the middle of the noise, precision under pressure. When you train your emotions, you stop handing your power to everything that pokes your ego. You stop arguing to win. You stop chasing apologies. You begin choosing stillness over speed, clarity over reaction. You hear an insult, but you don't respond, not because it didn't touch you, but because you didn't let it move you. And that confuses people. They're used to men who snap, but when they meet a man who breathes through the tension and answers without volume, they don't forget him. They respect him. To get there, you must stop being ashamed of what you feel. You can't control what you won't admit. And the deeper the feeling, the more critical it is to face it directly. Anger means something was crossed. Jealousy means that something you value is at risk. Fear means there's something you're not ready to lose. Don't push it down, pull it in. Translate it into strategy. Let it inform you, not enslave you. Start by catching yourself in the next emotional spike. That moment when someone triggers you, when the old script wants to take over. Instead of reacting, pause. Don't rush to correct them. Don't rush to protect yourself. Breathe once, twice. Anchor your posture. Say nothing if you don't trust your words. That silence, that second, that's where your evolution begins. Because the man who doesn't flinch commands more than the one who yells. And the man who can feel everything but move like still water, that man isn't just respected. He's remembered. He's rare. He's unshakable. And in a world that keeps daring you to explode, Choosing discipline over drama isn't just strength, it's power. Quiet power. The kind that doesn't need permission, explanation, or applause. The kind that doesn't shout to be heard. It's felt instantly, permanently. 6. Build yourself from wholeness, not emptiness. A man who builds from emptiness becomes addicted to being needed. His worth isn't self-contained, it's outsourced. He wants to be noticed, he loves to be loved back. He listens so he can be praised for being good. And every time the response fades, so does his center. That kind of man is easy to take for granted, because nothing about him says, I stand alone. Everything about him whispers, please keep me. Wholeness isn't loud, it's not proud, it doesn't demand attention, it radiates. You feel it when a man walks into a room and he isn't scanning it for approval. He knows his value. He isn't there to prove anything, impress anyone, or chase affirmation. He gives because he has, not because he's lacking. That kind of man doesn't need to be seen to feel complete. He's already filled from the inside out. But most men are taught the opposite. They're told to achieve, acquire, impress, to be validated into confidence. So they climb ranks, chase admiration, and pour into people who barely look back. They confuse external recognition with internal fulfillment, and then they wonder why, even after winning, they still feel hollow. It's because the foundation was built on audience, not alignment. On applause, not principle. Stoicism cuts through this illusion. It says, do not depend on praise to feel powerful. Do not require agreement to trust your judgment. Do not love from a place of need, but from grounded clarity. A Stoic man isn't detached because he's cold. He's detached because he refuses to place his peace in anyone else's hands. He gives freely, but doesn't collapse when others withdraw. His power doesn't drain when he's misunderstood. His center holds. You see this contrast in relationships most clearly. One man texts every hour, scans for replies, and feels anxious when silence lingers. He measures his worth by how wanted he feels. Another man sends a message, leaves it there, and continues living. Not because he doesn't care, but because he's not dependent. One is seeking, the other is steady. One is driven by fear of being forgotten, the other by presence that cannot be shaken by delay or dismissal. When you build yourself from emptiness, everything becomes a transaction. Love becomes a deal. Time becomes currency for validation. And eventually, you feel used, even if no one meant to use you. You overextend, you overgive, and you start resenting people who never asked you to abandon yourself in the first place. But when you build from wholeness, you give with limits. You help without expectation, and you walk away without collapsing when your standards aren't met. Start recognizing the difference. Wholeness doesn't mean self-isolation. It means you are emotionally independent enough to choose your relationships, not rely on them to survive. When you walk into a room, ask yourself, am I looking for something to fill me, or am I bringing something that overflows? That question defines your energy. And your energy defines how people treat you. Not because you ask them to, but because they feel it. Train your mind to no longer be hungry for reactions. Stop checking if they're watching. Stop over-explaining your moves. Silence is your ally when you're rooted. Presence is your proof. Begin today by doing something meaningful without needing it to be acknowledged. Help someone quietly. Make a decision without asking for validation. Leave a space without trying to be missed. Then notice how strong you still feel. That's your signal. That's your center. The man who no longer trades identity for attention becomes unforgettable. Not because he shouts louder, but because he no longer disappears when the room gets quiet. He stays solid, he stays self-led, and in a world full of seekers, the one who stands whole becomes the one no one can replace. 7. Keep becoming. Don't settle for less. They don't regret losing the man you were. They regret not being able to keep up with who you became. That's what unsettles them. Not the silence, not the goodbye, but the realization that while they stood still, you evolved without needing them. And now they can't reach you. Not because you moved away physically, but because you rose beyond the version of yourself they were once familiar with. The man who keeps becoming doesn't just move on, he moves above. Growth isn't about escape, it's about refinement. It doesn't mean you abandon your core, it means you sharpen it. Yet most men mistake evolution for betrayal. They hold on to who they were because they fear what they'll lose if they outgrow old roles. Friends, lovers, labels, expectations, they all cling tighter when they feel you slipping into something more. And that's where most stop. They settle. They stay. Not because they're content, but because becoming more threatens the comfort of being accepted. But acceptance is a low bar when it costs you your edge. Every time you deny your potential just to remain digestible, you become smaller than your standard. And smallness is never what people truly love. They love who you were when you were sure of yourself, disciplined in your mission, unshaken by distraction. The man they remember is the man who kept moving, even if it made them uncomfortable. Stoicism teaches that excellence is not an act, but a habit. It's not something you step into temporarily. It's who you become consistently. It's the quiet decision to not stay in rooms where your voice has to shrink, to not linger in relationships that only recognize your past, to not water yourself down so others feel taller. Growth is not ego, it's obligation. You owe yourself the next version of you, not to prove anything to the world, but to stop betraying the strength that's waiting beneath your hesitation. Men who never evolve live in loops, same reactions, same justifications, same patterns masked as stability. But comfort is often a coffin with cushions. It dulls your instincts, blurs your purpose, and leaves you surrounded by people who applaud the version of you that never challenges them. That's not a connection, that's a mutual limitation, and it ends in regret, not theirs, yours. So make discomfort your signal. When you feel too big for a space, trust it. When a relationship no longer sharpens you, step back. When your habits start making you feel numb instead of grounded, rewire them. Every man gets to choose between repetition and reinvention, and the ones who are remembered are not the ones who stayed the same to stay accepted. They're the ones who became so aligned, so self-led, that the world around them had no choice but to adjust or fall away. Start small, audit your patterns, spot the loops, break one of them this week, wake up earlier, say no faster, stop explaining your boundaries, speak with fewer words and more weight. Refuse to chase anything that costs your self-respect. And if it means losing something or someone who only knew the older version of you, let it go. You're not here to be constant. You're here to become. Because the man who keeps becoming doesn't fear being forgotten. He knows the people who were never meant to stay will fall away quietly. And the few who were built for his evolution will rise with him. They won't regret your silence. They'll respect your elevation. And that's the mark of a man who's done seeking. He's building. Quietly, relentlessly, without needing to be seen. Because the man who doesn't settle becomes the man no one forgets. You don't become unforgettable by accident. You become unforgettable through discipline, by choosing inner command over chaos, by speaking less but meaning more, by living so rooted in your truth that your presence carries weight, even in silence. Across these 7 principles, you've seen the difference between a man who reacts and a man who responds. One moves with ego, the other with reason. You've seen that power doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being calm, clear, and consistent. From choosing quiet confidence over shallow performance. From becoming emotionally resilient rather than emotionally dependent. When you build from self-respect instead of desperation, you stop chasing what was never meant for you. When you master your emotions, your discipline becomes visible even when you say nothing. And when you no longer need to be chosen, you begin to choose with clarity, and that's where your strength grows. But none of this is theory, it's a practice, daily, quietly, alone. So make this philosophy yours. Practice stillness each morning before the world pulls at you. Set a boundary today without apologizing for it. Let go of something that doesn't match who you're becoming. Say no with peace, say yes with presence, and speak less so your actions can speak louder. This isn't about becoming better than anyone else. It's about becoming stronger than your past self. And the deeper your self-mastery becomes, the less you'll need to explain it. People will feel it. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this message spoke to you most? What are you working on mastering within yourself? Share your story in the comments. Your discipline may be the reminder someone else needs today. Stay still, stay sharp, keep becoming.